Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. Welcome home, y'all. This is episode 7 of Native Land Pod, where we break down all that's happening in politics with a little bit of culture, too. We are your hosts, Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum, and we are still celebrating Black History Month. Y'all celebrating?
Yes,
I'm celebrating.
Of course. Absolutely. Happy Black History Month. Absolutely, we are.
At this time, we always like for you all to be reminded to rate our show, subscribe to our show, download our show, and most of all, review our show. That keeps us at the top, which is where we like to stay because we're a little competitive out this way. Oh, I got bars too, Tiff.
I like it. A-Rye. What do you say, standing on business with A-Rye?
10 toes. You missed 10 toes deep.
10 toes. 10 toes.
All right. On today's episode, we are going to discuss the long and windy road that is the 2024 election. Joe Biden is being pushed on racial justice by Black members of Congress and civil rights organizations, more than 100 to be exact. Donald Trump launched a sneaker brand because we were definitely looking for that, and maybe MAGA red bottoms might help him pay off that $355 million judgment. Nikki Haley is vowing to stay in the race to the very end of Super Tuesday, that is. And with the Michigan primary coming up on February 27th, we want to know, Michigan, who y'all got? Are you going with the Rashida Tlaib strategy, or are you going to vote Joe Biden? Fani Willis was actually cashing out in Napa Valley, according to the recollection of an employee who remembers her. In Politics Are Everywhere, Beyoncé is in the top spot in country music because Black History Month is an amazing time to remind white folks that we did that first too. And speaking of country logic, Alabama's Supreme Court says embryos are children. Stick around and we'll hear from you getting into those audience questions, and it would not be NLP without some calls to action too. Let's go.
Let's get it.
So we're going to start off with Joe Biden. He's being called to the carpet on racial justice related issues. Members of Congress, including Sheila Jackson Lee, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, and Barbara Lee, sent a letter last week asking for him to pay more attention to issues surrounding racial justice, including on H.R. 40, which has been introduced every Congress since 1986, I believe, first introduced by John Conyers. Voting rights, banned books, recognizing that the United States has a moral obligation for reparations as well. And then Barbara Lee's Commission on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. And to support that call to action, NBJC, National Black Justice Coalition, which is led by our dear brother, Dr. David Johns, as well as more than
Happy birthday, David Johns.
Yes, it is his birthday when we're recording.
Birthday.
Happy birthday, DJ. As well as more than 100 other civil rights organizations co-signed on these requests. What do y'all think about this?
I would say my question is, what exactly does racial justice look like? I do, just to be factual here, want to remind everybody that Joe Biden did sign an executive order on racial justice, advancing racial equity. It was his first executive order he signed in January of 2021. He signed another one in February of last year. So I think that's important as well. But I'm going to answer a question and throw it back to you guys, because we're not a homogenous group of people. And when these executive orders are signed, it's a big tent. He's not signing to advance racial equity for Black people. It's this designed to it cast a wide net to include a lot of people, which I think is absolutely fair and appropriate. But what exactly, what are the tangibles that we're asking for? And I think some people don't realize that in order to achieve true racial equity and racial justice, it requires cooperation from the state and local governments. That is a huge point. It requires a commitment from territorial and tribal governments. So collectively, I think we have to consider what this means at large.
One thing, I just want one point of clarity. Sorry, Andrew. I want to make sure that I'm clear about this. They aren't asking for the equity order executive action that he initially did, this is calling for specific action that is in alignment with some of those bills. So the reparations pieces, the banned books piece, this is Voting Rights Act, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. Because
10,
why? Congress is taking no action. So they're pleading with Joe Biden to step in where Congress has dropped the ball. Sorry about that, Andrew. Just wanted to clarify that.
No. I think, what I was going to say, I think there may be 10 pieces of legislation that they are referencing back to in this letter. The problem is it doesn't appear, at least in my humble opinion, that Congress is taking any leads from Joe Biden. They're not taking any leads from Democrats in Congress who, frankly, after the results of the election, 2 weeks ago, Republicans only have 2 votes, two members of their caucus that they can lose on any vote in order to move anything. Tiffany brought up a really great point, which is local and state governments needing to also contemplate, and better than contemplate, take action in furtherance of racial equity. And we know in some parts of this country, that conversation will get zero seconds. But in other parts, if you're a city council member, a mayor, a school board member, consider what you can do at your respective level with regards to bidding, contracting guidelines. I'll give you one example. When I was on in Tallahassee City Commission, we had a guideline that required, in order for you to compete to do bond work, which is multi-millions, billions, trillions of dollars moving, you had to have been around like 30 years, 40 years in the business. Well, who wasn't in the business for 40 years ago? 40 years ago. It was a pointless, in my opinion, expectation. And through a lot of hard work and due diligence and some standoffs, we changed that policy so that it looked more like what was required to get diversity included in that practice. So just know, at whatever level you are, there are steps you can take in furtherance of this idea of increasing and expanding racial equity and racial justice.
But what if you're not an elected official?
You can advocate. You can advocate, raise your voice, go down and ask. And guess what? You might not even meet a resistant audience. You might meet people who just never considered what it might mean to have to expect for somebody to be in business 40 years in order to do business with you.
Right.
And just ask the question. Sometimes by just asking the question, you can move some of this stuff.
Speaking of advocating, we have some very active listeners and audience members every single week. We have a question on one of the subjects raised in these letters on reparations from Monica William Harris. Let's roll that.
Hey, Native Land Podcast. Monica Williams Harris here from Atlanta. Wanted to get your thoughts quickly on this idea of reparations in terms of why it is, when it comes to the idea of reparations as it relates to the descendants of enslaved Africans, the issue of funding always comes up. Ironically, when it comes to other groups of people, in terms of reparations, there seems to be this unlimited bucket of money to pay reparations. And reparations are absolutely due the descendants of those other groups whose ancestors faced atrocities. So just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of the why there seems to be a bucket of money for one, and not so much a bucket of money or piecemeal distribution for us. Thanks so much.
I appreciate the question. And I think she sounds like she's on par with the 100+ organizations that have asked, President Biden to weigh in here. And of course, most recently as well, descendants of enslaved people who worked on the St. Louis University campus in Missouri, nearly 200 people, right? And they say now that equates to more than $70 billion in reparations. I think they're following suit, watching what happened at Georgetown. So this is a question that not only deserves to be answered, but I also understand her frustration around seeing other folks historically benefiting. When we say reparations, it sounds like it's a foreign language, but we've seen other groups of people receive restorative and reparative justice for harm done, and we never get our share or our say.
And it's not just, specific to this country, but even the United States, the reparations they paid to victims of the internment camps during the war for the Japanese internment camps. It was also the federal government compensating victims of the Tuskegee experiment, which, obviously was Black people. Florida, your state, Andrew, compensate victims of Rosewood, the Rosewood riot in 1923. But on a global scale, we've seen this done. done. In South Africa, they have set up a reparations program post-apartheid. In Germany, they set up a reparations program to compensate victims of the Holocaust. So it's really this shame on the United States to be so readily resistant to making this right, because we are capable. It could literally happen. And just to remind folks, Angela brought up HR 40. HR 40 is exactly that, to study. And Sheila Jackson-Lee, I have to give her a shout out because she picked up that mantle from Congressman Conyers. It is just a study to examine what that would look like, to examine the financial impact of what Black people contributed to this country, and to remind folks the reason why the United States is a superpower is because of enslavement. It is because of cotton, sugar, etc., that Black people contributed during enslavement that made this country a superpower. We are literally the only reason, and we have never seen the wealth that we helped create for the country.
I just think there's great points, Tiff. I just add that the root word in reparations is like to repair. And to repair something means there must have been a breach at some point. And the breach was, frankly, the usury of human labor, the trafficking of humans, the usury of human labor, and the indignity that slavery and enslavement represented. And all we're simply saying is, you got to pay. To quote Beyoncé, you got to pay me what you owe me. No one's asking for giveaways, no free stuff, we're saying you have to compensate the folks who did the work, who did the labor, who built this joint, Angela Rye, for free. Because we're now saying, had we had our choice in the matter, it wouldn't have been free. It would have been just like the rest of your countrymen who got paid for the work that they did during that time. So I just think the conversation of reparations is so heated. It causes such a visceral reaction for, quite frankly, the majority community, and even some of us really are highly suspect of the conversation because of what it suggests. And I think part of what it suggests to people is that you got folks who don't deserve something coming again, begging and asking for something for free. And we're not asking for anything for free. We're saying, quote, pay me what you owe me.
What you owe me. And speaking of people who need to pay what they owe, I want to toss to sound where Black folks weigh in on Donald Trump versus Joe Biden.
Trump or Biden?
Trump.
Why do you say that?
He's a businessman. He's going to think business. And Biden is a racist.
Who do you think has done more for the Black community, Trump or Biden?
I ain't even see Biden yet. I know Trump was out here. He was out here. Oh, bro, he was out here. He slid for us. Oh, God.
That's why he built the highest wall. Mike was coming over here and everything. And, we've been here for all this time and can't get a free hamburger. And they come here and get all this shit, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I say, Biden, he ain't doing shit, he ain't shit. So, but Trump, I would feel that will be the better person to get in.
Biden, that's the fuck Biden.
I don't think we should play a lot of that.
I don't think we should play any of that.
I don't think any of. I don't know.
I wouldn't.
I didn't know we were.
I want to play some of it. I do not want to play like the whole last.
Let's talk about what part, because this is a whole commercial.
And we should include
ridiculous.
That's fine. It is ridiculous, and that's why I want to talk about it, because this video is very clearly edited to only cover the folks from Trump. This is in Chicago. I'm not at all supporting this. That's not the purpose of this. It's to demonstrate how much misinformation has impacted our community. Folks thinking that the stock market was better under Donald Trump. Folks thinking that our community did better under Donald Trump. Where is that coming from, and when are we going to begin hitting back? Well, Donald Trump now goes to SneakerCon to sling sneakers, because that's another way to reach Black folks in the most stereotypical way. So if we can, roll what happened when he goes to Philly.
I just want to thank you very much for being here. It's an honor. It's an honor. You're all sneakerheads. You're sneakerheads, right? Wow. A lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion in this room. Thank you.
So as you can hear, Donald Trump gets booed. I'm trying to understand the timing of this, but interestingly enough, he starts sling this sneaker just the day after he gets slapped with a $355 million verdict in a fraud lawsuit. That's just the first of many, by the way. And now he's trying to raise money for his legal fees.
Let me just say about that video. That video does not represent any real constituency. I think it's really dangerous to perpetuate that kind of messaging. I don't know anything about Black conservative, whatever the network was, or anything about who shot it or what the circumstances were. So I just want to make that super clear. And two, there are not droves of people, Black people, lining up to support Donald Trump.
All.
That is a lie that is perpetuated, and we certainly do not want to perpetuate that here on Native Land Pod. I think the most important question is, what is his base doing? We're not going to pluck 5 asinine-sounding people from our community to say that that represents something. It absolutely does not. And
Tiff,
I want
what
people
I found
to
interesting
Yeah, go ahead.
on
Go
the
ahead,
second
Andrew.
part is that the credit they were giving to Trump are the things that Biden has accomplished. The best stock market performance in history is right now under the Biden administration as a result of Biden policies pursued largely and passed under a Democratic-controlled Congress. Since they have come into power, they have moved absolutely nothing in the interest of the American people. Trump didn't even know what the hell he was doing when he was there the first time. Again, I don't know if these folks were paid. I don't know what the hell the primer was prior to them doing this performative mess, that we just witnessed. And I'm pretty enraged because this is the kind of stuff that gets moved around and gives people the sense that there is a real constituency. I mean, a real constituency out there for Black folks getting on the bandwagon of Donald Trump. And I just got to say, I don't see it. I don't know what that mess was we just saw, but it is not evidenced in any other polls, any other numbers, anything, anywhere. We have our critiques about age. We have our critiques about the things that we want more of, for sure. There's no doubt about it. But what I know about Black folks around this country, while we are not a monolith, we are pragmatic people. And at the end of the day, what we're going to vote for are our interests, our survival, and our future. And when given the choice between Donald Trump and Joe Biden against that matrix, there ain't no competition. Biden wins hands down every time. Now, that doesn't remove pressure from us applying pressure for more to do better. There's a lot that has to be covered. I get it. But that ain't it. I don't know who homeboy is, but that ain't it.
Well, I just think the danger of playing something like that, if you're not going to go back and fact check every little thing that they said that's wrong, then people do pull from that and think, oh, this is how people feel. So I just want to be crystal clear that that's not what we're doing here. We didn't fact check every little thing, but much of that was a lie.
No, I think I did say that a lot of that was not true. I think Andrew just said
no,
the same
I know.
thing.
I understand that you all said generally, but I'm saying specifically, if you go through each thing they said, okay, well, he just said X. Let me tell you why X is not true and break that down. And I know we don't have time to do it because I know we go long. That sounds like a good
mini pod. I love that.
Yeah.
But I also think that it is important to understand that there are people like that who sound like that in our community. It is true. Doubt. There are Breakfast Club callers who sound like that. So I'm also not going to take that away because that is your experience. It does not make it factual. And so that is the importance of podcasts like this, of platforms like this, to ensure you do know the facts. Because someone put their name on a stimulus check does not mean that's the only stimulus check you received, right? There was a stimulus check in this administration. There was another attempt that a Republican-led Congress blocked.
I want to be of sound mind and body and spirit on this last piece because I agree with you that there are sentiments out there that are in some ways reflective a bit of what we just heard. But the cautionary piece here is when you see that many voices spewing that much incorrectness and craziness, I think it may potentially leave people with the opinion that the constituency of that group is larger than what it is. And I hear people with those kinds of critiques who didn't arrive at the conclusion that then Donald Trump was going to be the answer. I hear critiques of, I ain't have nothing done in my community since da-da-da-da-da-da. I hear that. But then jumping to the logical conclusion, they don't draw the logical conclusion that Donald Trump then is going to be the answer, the cure, the balm in Gilead. He ain't that. And I accept the challenge of us following this up with a fact check, a mini pod fact check that we can circulate and make sure, and hopefully maybe get in front of some of these people so that they know fact from fiction. If we were writing a fiction book, that'd be one thing. We trying to live in today, survive, and not just survive, but thrive. And this whole thing is a setback.
You feel complete? Because we almost out of time. Like
I
the
am.
point
I
is,
am.
the
I'm good.
point is to understand that people are playing this shit on Fox News.
I get it.
They have him going to SneakerCon. There are ill-informed leaders in our community, people who look up to folks as role models that carry mics, not because they're in political debates, but because some of them are rappers saying the same thing. The
Agreed.
misinformation is pervasive. And when you you combine misinformation with experience that feels unjust and that feels oppressive, people are being led to believe that this is the right answer.
I agree.
And this is the same conversation we had last week. At some point, there has to be a wider gap drawn. The reason that these folks in Congress and these civil rights organizations signed a letter is because there has to be a wider gap drawn, a wider
Agreed.
gap created. That's the bottom line. It should be no competition. There should be no confusion.
In my opinion, the bottom line is what we are bottling up here are over 400 years of systematic oppression of a peoples. And just as we sat in front of Barack Obama and asked him as the first African-American president, what are you going to do for us to cure all these ills? What was made clear then, and it is true today, that we can't cure 400 years of oppression in 4 years or even 8 years. And so I just think we have to be careful at where we lay the burden of this. The burden of it goes across all political parties, across all levels of government. It shows up. So the reason why I'm okay with this letter that the civil rights organizations did and are putting before is because I think it is done, one, with good intention and obviously with great need. But what those folks understand is that letter could have been sent to Barack Obama. It could have been sent to freaking John F. Kennedy. I mean, this thing goes so far back of the things that have to be cured.
And they have.
Right. All I'm saying is to make the two the two options here, Joe Biden or Trump, to deliver us from all of that is a false narrative. Neither one of them are going to deliver us from that. What we hope they do is contribute to the kind of liberation that leads to all of us being able to be free, particularly those of us who have been in bondage and are still in many ways in bondage of systematic oppression. But that ain't going to be cured by one man or the other, or two. This has got to happen at a systematic level. And systems aren't represented by individual people largely. They're represented by rules, policies, procedures, so on and so forth. And so it's just, it deserves a larger conversation. We have to unpack it, I think, in a less emotional way. I'm getting hot as I think about it.
No, I think you should. You should get emotional. This is our people. This is our survival. You should get emotional.
I don't think there's anything wrong with emotion. But I'm mostly emotional about the mirage, right? You're in the desert and you think right up here is water. There ain't no water there. There's no water there. And so when we keep, when we keep making our demands appear as if they can be cured by one person, one individual, we do that in ignorance of the huge behemoth of a system that we must dismantle, that we must level. And those systems, while they may have figureheads, while they may have co-conspirators who look like you and I are people, they are largely baked into the cake because of the laws, systems, structures that exist. And that's what has to be leveled. And when I think about who's going to contribute to leveling them, I think between two people, it sure as hell ain't goddamn Donald Trump. No day of the week.
And to that point, I appreciate that Black History Month lesson in this very important Black History Month. And just like Nikki Haley is nearly out of time for her for her presidential run, we're out of time. We're going to take this commercial break and we'll be right back. There is a Republican primary coming up this weekend. Nikki Haley is still in the race, but we don't have time to talk about her race, and neither do the polls hardly. What we are going to talk about.
Declared it over, Angela.
I don't think I did. I think the people have spoken.
But Nikki said, I don't care what happened on Saturday. I'm staying in this thing. I'm riding to the 4 flat tires plus everything.
They flat, boo. They flat. So here's what's not flat, though. The Michigan primary, which is coming up next Tuesday. I think that we need to talk about this. So Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is the only Palestinian American in Congress right now who has family in Palestine, who's been deeply moved and is grieving what's happening over there, has made the following request of Michigan primary voters. Let's take a listen.
This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible. Right now, we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. If you want us to be louder, then come here and vote uncommitted. So you all will recall that in Nevada recently, none of these candidates beat Nikki Haley. And it sounds like Rashida Tlaib is hoping for something similar in Michigan. I think my question is, if they're voting uncommitted in a primary, is that an effective protest vote strategy? And if not, who they got? Like, who's their other option? Is that the same effect as staying at home if you vote uncommitted? What do y'all think?
You know, Andrew and I had a conversation one time, and I feel bad because I have quoted Andrew on this podcast, and then people start doing these little shared stories like, don't expect a hyena to act like a lion and put my name underneath. That was not me. That is Andrew.
And it wasn't me. I heard he preached.
Okay. We stole it from somebody, so praise the Lord.
Well, that's good because people be listening to this podcast and stealing it for their own, but I digress. Right. Carry on, Tiff.
Exactly.
Name check.
I think I know, but I think Andrew, you made a really good point about Black people and our imaginations and what it means to envision a democracy that serves us. And because we have been so oppressed in this country, that we have always had to vote how we think the majority of white people might vote. We've never had the privilege of being able to pick a candidate who truly inspires us and speaks for us, save for the exception of, I would say, for a lot of people, former President Barack Obama. So I will toss it back to you guys to say what, if not for a protest vote, and if we're going towards a society where there will be no racial majority by the year 2040, then we have to start getting used to voting for candidates, driving the narrative around who votes for candidates. But what does a protest vote look like for us right now as we're on the journey to getting to that? Because I don't want to just discard people like Rashida Tlaib for saying, hey, this is something that's important. But on the other side, I do understand, hey, there are, needs that your constituents have that have to be met. And I don't know how impactful it is to not vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, I guess, so just for folks
in the primary, by the way, I just want to make sure it's clear.
I was just going to say, we should frame that what she's advocating for is in this primary, which are Democrats only and then Republicans only, and then they will produce a nominee. She's saying when it gets to Michigan and we're supposed to be voting for who we think ought to represent the Democratic Party. And by the way, nationally, nobody's talked about who else is running against Joe Biden, but there are other Democrats competing for the Democratic nomination. There are not any names that I can repeat here. There are, so there will be other people on their ballot. Joe Biden will likely walk away with it there anyway. What she's saying is go in there and show that you have a problem with the way in which this war in Israel is being prosecuted and the accountability that appears to be missing when it comes to America, who is largely funding much of this, appears to be willing to exert over Netanyahu, who has walked away from treaties, pacts, other agreements that have been hard fought and hard won. And Rashida, who is the only Palestinian American, I believe, in the U.S. Congress, is seeing relatives, family members her community, her people being largely displaced and really under attack. And that by the way is not to say that Israel hasn't also suffered greatly here in the process, but she's saying there's got to be some love, some accountability here, some humanity being exerted here. And I have to tell you, if there's going to be a protest vote, I much prefer it in a primary election rather than when we get to November and we are choosing between two people, largely, where one of them is going to emerge as president. We got to think critically about which one of those choices are going to be in our long-term best interest for ourselves and for our children and for our children's children. And that's what we're talking about here. So I will say, I don't oppose what Rashida is doing as it relates to getting out there and saying, Biden, you need to hear the depth of our anger, the depth of our concern. Yeah. And this is how we're going to show it to you. But come November, y'all, we got two choices.
Yeah.
At least that's what we have right now, unless there's some upheaval at the DNC that we don't know about. Exactly.
Not voting is a choice. Not voting is a choice.
Yes, thank you. We're going to broaden this thing out a little bit and hear this listener question. I love this one. It's from a college.
Hi, my name is Katie Barron, and I go to Birmingham Southern College, and I'm in the class of Pillars of Africana Thought. And our question for you for this week was, how do we incentivize elected officials who are working on behalf of Black people to speak to this constituency and those who care about justice and equality more directly, as opposed to spending so much time trying to convince those who are opposed to justice and freedom, particularly in Black and brown communities?
I love this question, and there's nobody better to answer this than our very own Tiffany Cross, who is the author of Say It Louder.
Get it.
Tell them, Tiff, what's the answer here, girl?
Grab the book. Grab the book.
This only give us a little teaser, though. Make them read the book. Also, we got a time crunch. It's got to make a flight.
Yes, I know exactly. I'm gonna be real quick. Here's the thing: when politicians talk about their deliverables, like what they want to do for constituents, they scream and shout to every constituency about what they can do. When they talk to Black people, it's a whisper and it's private and it's quiet. Once I get in office, I'm gonna help y'all. But hey, for the people who care about stem cell, and hey, to the people who don't want people to have choice, and hey, to the people who care about gun rights, we're gonna speak to you loudly. They will spend more time trying to convince MAGA voters and quote unquote swing voters who don't exist to come over to their side than they will to energize their base. So we have to stop that. We have to start leaning into our power and holding people accountable to make sure that happens. Furthermore, we have to start pressing the media. I don't think people pay enough attention to the outsized role that media plays in elections. And media will often have people over and they'll ask a politician, well, you're running as a Democrat. How do you plan on convincing some of those red state MAGA voters or some of those MAGA supporters to vote for you? Why is that a relevant question to a Democrat running? Tell me how you're going to convince me. Dance with the one who brung you. I don't want to hear how you're going to convince the people who left you a long time ago, the 1960s to be exact. So I think it's a two-part role. One, the media has to stop doing that bullshit because it is frustrating every single time I hear it. And two, we have to stay true and committed to our values and start tuning out the nonsense. And we can go directly to the source. We can go to their website, their page, and we have to just, in this age where social media has democratized who has a voice, we have to start holding them accountable and look for what ways are you advancing issues that are relevant to me, my community, and for the greater good.
I love it. Thanks, Tiff. Okay, Andrew, your favorite. I think that there's no bigger stand for Fani Willis on this podcast than Andrew Gillum. So, AG, you got it.
No,
bring us home.
Bring it home. Okay, listen, this will be quick too, because I know we spent some time doing a Facebook Live talking about
that was Instagram
Live.
Instagram.
Oh,
Grandpa?
Shoot, my bad. Look, they owned by the same man, right? Or
that is true. Fair point.
I'll give you that. Meta.
Okay. All right. There it is. All I'm saying. Anyway, we've all been, I think, enraptured. I know I was by the testimony of Fani Willis last week before, whatever. And then we talked about it on the pod. Well, a lot of people appeared to be shocked when she said she pays in cash.
You're a woman and you go on a date with a man, you better have $200 in your pocket. So if that man acts up, you can go where you want to go. So I keep cash in my house, and I don't keep cash as good in my purse like I used to. I don't go on many dates, but when you go on a date, you should have cash in your pocket.
She got a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and maybe even some suspicion from those in the system who said no one does that. It's not true. So let me toss to this clip where we hear from somebody who might confirm her use of cash.
And he distinctly remembers the moment the bill came because it was about $400, and Fani Willis told him that she was going to pay cash, which struck him as odd given the amount. But take a listen to what he told me about his recollection of their visit to this winery and the moment where Fani Willis foot the bill.
I ran up the thing and I showed her, I was expecting a credit card, quite frankly. And she said, I'll pay cash. And so that was that. So then I just put the cash in, made change for her, and she was very generous to me.
I love that he added in the last part, she was very generous to me. I think we know what that means. But that was her waiter who had his memory jogged from her visit to the winery where she pulled out cash and she paid. And I'm just saying, for those of us who were suspect and who were like, nobody pays in cash and nobody has that, y'all, homegirl paid in cash.
I was not suggesting that people don't pay in cash. I know black folks do pay in cash. I was more shocked, like, you paid cash to the dude on a date? Like, that's where I was like, whoa.
Hey, look, let me tell you, the heat she brought on that when she talked about their disagreements in the relationship and that she was,
his equal.
Her equal.
Yeah.
She made the point, his equal, and that's why I paid him back. I mean, she was pretty clear about that. And, I believed her then, but I'm glad to see that somebody has come out to say, in fact, I have no interest in this, but in fact, I was a waiter. I was surprised she did it. I took that cash, and guess what? She was very generous to me.
Well, I just want to remind people the person on trial is the former president, Donald Trump, who we have heard numerous times on a phone call asking elected officials there to find him an additional 11,000 votes. The mere question of if DA Fani Willis financially benefited from hiring a qualified attorney on her team with whom she happened to have a previous relationship is completely asinine when we're looking at what case she has built against this president and what he actually did, the crime that he actually committed. And we have evidence that we've all heard. So we've spent way too much time talking about this black woman's dating life and trying to question her every move, and not enough time hoping that the judge there makes the right decision by keeping her on the case.
I feel like they definitely gonna call me a Trump plant today, because this is y'all know already. We talked so much about this on our Instagram live too, but I do believe that as an attorney myself, you have to be above reproach. And in the Fulton County trial, where Trump is a lead defendant, he has 18 co-defendants. So no wonder they're all in Fani's mix. But I do believe the issue here isn't just whether she benefited financially from the relationship. It is also whether there is a material conflict. It has since been broadened beyond that initial scope to whether or not there was a material conflict that means she should be disqualified from prosecuting this particuar case. I think that still is an issue, and the judge,
appreciate you continuously.
Judge hasn't yet ruled. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Angela. I just want to say I appreciate you continuously reinserting why we're even here having this conversation about the district attorney, but also I want to be clear that the reason for them having gone down this road in the first place was, in my opinion, not because anybody legitimately thought this woman is only prosecuting these defendants, including Donald Trump, because she needed money to go on a vacation or catch a plane or go to a winery. Right. That on its face to me is just ridiculous. But that has led us down this road where she's had to go into far more detail than any of us would like to about our personal affairs. And in this case, I'm personally glad that she has further validation that she was honest and truthful. And now we can get back to the reason for this case in the first place, which is the illegal actions by Donald Trump and all of his squad.
Y'all young lawyers out there, be prepared for them to be all in your mix if you try to take on a big case. And in speaking of mix, we got to be all up in ours and pay our bills. We're going to take another break and be right back. All right, we are back with one of our favorites. This is Politics Are Everywhere. And it's our girl Tiff with the update. What's going on in the world, Tiff? What are we talking about?
Well, I just want to tell you all, this ain't Texas. Ain't no hold 'em. Put them cards on the table, because that's what B said. And she is number 1 on the country music chart. But let me tell you why I'm excited about this. Number 1, I've listened to this song 18 times. I've looked at all the line dances that people are creating. And it's like, let me just give you some guidance. If I can't learn this in a few simple steps, y'all are doing advanced choreography. That is right. Like, who can do these line dances? But I think why we're talking about this in all seriousness is because of the resistance from some stations who have refused to play her music. There has also been people who are saying that she's not country, she can't be country music. If you'll recall, she did a country song before on her Lemonade album where she talked about her dad, and the Grammys refused to accept that into the country category. But there's been a long history, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers know, of Black people in country music. In recent history, we have Tracy Chapman with Fast Car, Darius Rucker of Hootie and the Blowfish. There are also Latino, Spanish-speaking country singers. Country music originated in the Black tradition. There's a whole movement of Black folks to reclaim folk music. I remember growing up in the 80s, there was always like a country soul performance. I remember Patti LaBelle singing duets with Dolly Parton. And so when her country album dropped, I was kind of excited because I thought when I've seen like a lot of the country music fans do these very involved line dances, I'm like, oh, this would be interesting. I know our stuff was going to be dope, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. And of course, it's all these people having all this resistance. When are y'all going to stop being so terrible? You know, just stop being terrible and celebrate talent and embrace this music. Music is the one thing that brings us together, I think. And I think traditionally, if you look throughout history, this is where we can align and build bridges. So just stop being terrible. We're so exhausted of y'all being terrible. Stop being terrible. Anyway,
Tiff,
Andrew, have you learned the line dance? Angela, have you learned the line dance? I don't know if y'all know this. Angela cannot twerk. I cannot twerk, so I had no shade. We got to try to get a lesson from our girl. Andrew, can you twerk?
Got a clue.
Exactly. Have y'all downloaded the single yet? It's 16 carriages.
Oh yeah. I played it this morning.
I have downloaded.
Do you like it?
I do. I like 16 carriages better. And we just want to note here that because of Texas Hold'em, Beyoncé just became the first Black woman artist with a #1 country song on Billboard.
Yes.
That's right.
So we were just speaking of country music. We're going to get to a country part of the world. We're talking about Alabama, where the Alabama Supreme Court has ruled that unborn children are also children. This is hitting me kind of personally because this is about an IVF clinic where a patient went into a space where they weren't supposed to go, and they dropped several fertilized eggs, embryos, on the ground, resulting in people losing some embryos and not being able to pursue their plans. And now with this ruling, they are potentially putting IVF clinics at risk of being able to further help couples who may be dealing with infertility. There's a 26-year-old who mentioned that she doesn't know what's going to happen. This ruling literally came down the day that she was beginning injections for egg retrieval. So this is, I don't know why the government needs to be in our business to this degree. It is such an overreach. It is so gross. I cannot wait until bills start coming out all over the country. There have already been a couple about regulating men's use of Viagra. I just think that once we do that a little more, they will back up out of the vagina. It is really it's just too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
That's a lot right there, Angela.
Well,
and I think there should be some regulation in support for couples seeking infertility treatments. I had 4 cycles of IVF that failed. This is not what I mean by that, right? Like, this ain't your business. Let me figure this out.
Yeah. And thank you, Angela, for even sharing, your 4 cycles that you've had, because millions of people have gone through this or are presently going through this across the country. So one, you're not alone, but legislation like this certainly has an impact. And these are voters, people. These are voters. But I just want to point out a little something about Alabama, who cares so much about children. Right now, there are over 10,000 kids in foster care in the state of Alabama. There's been a 10.7% increase of kids going to foster care in the state of Alabama. Alabama since 2018. So I would ask some of these people who are not pro-life but anti-choice, how many children have you adopted out of the foster care system? Because that is an option that they love to throw out to people who are pro-choice. And how concerned are you about the children who are involved? Have you shown up? Do you volunteer? Do you encourage other people? Are you involved? Or are you just holding up protest signs, worrying about what's happening in my snatch?
Yeah, how about that?
All
and to
fair.
the point, Tiff loves
All
data.
fair.
On that point, 1 in 6 people in this country are impacted by infertility. So maybe we should treat this a little more with a little more tender love and care.
Tender love, care, respect. Angela, as you know, Tiff, I thank God for our twins, thanks to IVF and successful treatment.
That's
right?
Andrew,
And then-
didn't think about that. That's true.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court. I don't know if you read the opinion, but the language they use in the invocation of what God's providence is and what He would want for us and what He believes in and what He doesn't. It is. I mean, I don't know where these people went to law school. I don't know where their degrees come from, but they have not only
Oral Roberts University.
Okay. All I know is they've not only encroached on, obviously, a woman's body in the most terrible ways, but they have also, in my opinion, completely shredded the law. And I just hope that the people in Alabama are waking up to recognize that this is an assault that is not at their doorstep, but in their bedrooms, and that they got some work to do down there.
Yeah.
I guess I should say over there. I'm in Florida. Over there.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Good point.
We have another listener's question from David. Let's roll it.
My name is David Hackney from Durham, North Carolina. Recently, Sage Steele made a comment that the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, was divisive. Oftentimes when they're uncomfortable, they use that term, divisive, to describe us when we're advocating for ourselves. The question is, how do we change this narrative? And how do we get them to see that their very own national anthem is divisive in itself and is often a trigger for many of our people? Have a great day. Thank you.
I love this question at the end, not the beginning.
Go ahead and hit
there
it,
are some
Angela.
people
Go hit it.
who I don't feel like deserve platforms. There are some people who decided that the line was shorter on the other side of the aisle, and if they caped and cooned for the other side, that they somehow would find fame. And she is one of those people. How dare you talk about a national anthem that is deeply spiritual to our people? How dare you? We have the stanza from the Black National Anthem included in the very purpose of this podcast. How dare you? I still do not stand for the national anthem to this day because of how divisive it is, how triggering it is, now understanding what is in the second stanza by Francis Scott Key, right? Like, how dare you? You're talking about a life of an enslaved person being referenced in theirs, but you can't understand what it means to be true to our God, true to our native land, like through our tears, through our weary years, through all of the things. I'm not going to cite all the lyrics because Sage, I don't even believe you ever heard it. But the point is, it's not divisive to highlight the Black experience. It is divisive to try to erase the Black experience. That is what is done in the actual American national anthem. It is not divisive for you to have to recollect history. That is so sad that you feel that way. It is so sad that you are so ashamed of your Black side, your Black skin, that you will run and revolt to the other side to make whiteness feel more comfortable.
I wonder how her kids feel, because they're also Black. So I wonder how her kids, like, when they hear something like that. I mean, I think it's clear Sage Steele is a confused, self-hating, half-witted, shucking and jiving idiot. You know, like,
well, I'm just glad they revealed that they are anti-prayer, right? Because the last stanza of the Negro National Anthem is a prayer. God of our silent tears, God of our weary years, God who has brought us thus far along the way. Thy who has by thy might led us into the light. Maybe. Right? So, first of all, I ain't trying
we
to convince
appreciate the flex that you know the last verse of the national anthem, the Black National Anthem.
No, the real test is, do you know the second one?
Right. Let me just let y'all know. I don't know. I know the
not
first
you,
verse.
Andrew. Not you, Andrew. Not
okay.
you. I think Tiff's point is like she probably hasn't even read through the whole thing. And I'm saying even the people who are actually down for the cause and haven't had their black cards revoked, many of us do not know the second verse without at least a little.
I gotta look at something.
Prompt. A little prompt.
I gotta hum for a minute, and then I'm like,
you talking about watermelon.
Yeah. All I would say is, I don't think anybody should spend any time trying to convince anybody who don't appreciate, doesn't value, doesn't understand what that means to us to all of a sudden care. I don't. That is the Negro National Anthem to me is so personal. I mean, that's why I love the fourth stanza being a prayer, right? It is
third.
It is built through struggle, through hardship. Third stanza. I'm sorry. No, is that right? Yeah, third.
Yeah, it's the third.
I'm just checking. Third.
No, you're right. You're right that it's the third.
You're right, but you're wrong. It's the third.
It's the third. But that said, that's all we need to say about that. We're going to go ahead and pause for an ad break and get back to calls to action. All right. So we are back with our, well, at least my favorite part, calls to action. It's not a podcast with discussion with us unless there's something to do. There's stuff that we need for y'all to do. So we're going to start off this week with Tiff. Tiff has a good one. Tiff, what you got?
Yes. So you guys know the State of the Union is coming up on March 7th. And so I would like to hear from our listeners and our viewers about what you would like to hear President Biden address during the State of the Union. Now, as you all know, this is when he comes before a joint session of Congress to actually give the state of our union. So we just want to hear from you, how you feel about it. We're going to play some of your responses next week, and we hope that it may even echo chamber up to the White House so they can hear what his base would like to hear him address in the State of the Union. So that's our ask. It's my call to action, but it's on behalf of my co-hosts, Andrew and Angela.
Love that.
We really want to hear from you. So shoot us a video. We want to see those beautiful faces. And so we can see you and put together our own montage.
If you're shy, you can write. If you're shy.
We need the sound. So please put it on video. And send it to us.
It's her
we
call
can
to action.
play
I'm going to
it.
step out.
Well, Andrew, since you're so eager to double dutch in, why don't you go ahead and do your call to action next?
Listen, this past week or two, my wife and I spent some time helping our kids with their Black History Month projects, which every fourth grader in the school has to do. And then it goes to the media center, and then all the other kids in the school get to go and visit and learn different Black history facts. And my call to action is, my son presented his yesterday and was surprised that not anyone else in the class had heard of the individual. And I would just like to encourage, wherever you're from, who you are, your background, whatever, that all of us before this month lets out takes the opportunity to lift up some Black history in your own home for your family, your children, your whomever. Let's not take it for granted. The school didn't allow them to talk about Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, because those are folks who are largely in the regular curriculum of the school. So reach out beyond the well-known names and figures, and bring yourself a little education in your family, your household, and particularly if you've got kids, try to introduce them to some of the lesser known, lesser talked about individuals and moments in Black history.
I love that.
Now, I did note that you said individual. Do you remember the individual's name on Jackson's
I do, but
project?
I'm not going to. That wasn't important, so I wanted to.
Okay.
It is important, but most importantly, lift up the individuals who are lesser known and instances
like send
lesser
in
known.
answers and guess.
I love it.
Mine is another big one for our audience. As you all can probably tell, we are working so hard to try to keep this podcast under an hour. There's always so much happening. And even though we love each other deeply, there's always a little bit of nuance in our opinions. And so there's disagreement, but with love and respect. They almost killed me earlier, but I think I'm still here. I'm checking. I'm still here. I'm still here. But my question for you all is, we always talk about a top 5 in rap. I want us to have a top 5 in topics. And every week we want you all to pick a topic you want us to address in the first half. We have these quick topics. Well, they're supposed to be quick, but we'd love to hear from you all. We're trying to get folks in the spirit of voting. And we want you to vote every week, and not only just send in your questions, not only send in what you want to hear for State of the Union, but vote on a topic you want us to address every week. We'll send out the top 5 and have y'all vote on that at the top of the week. And before we end the show, I want to remind everyone to leave us a review. Subscribe to Native Land Pod anywhere where you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure you're downloading those episodes. New episodes drop every single Thursday around 10-ish a.m. for the audio. You can also follow us on social media at Native Land Pod. We are your hosts, Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and Andrew Gillum. There are 256 days until Election Day. Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome home.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.